And I think it's absolutely indefensible, to pretend like this is a non-issue and to pretend like this is something that should go forward because of procedural issues. At the end of the day, you can't pay both sides of the fence. You can't say, hey, when it goes against the fighter that you have, then VADA is great, and when it works in your favor, VADA is great, and you can't say that when it works against you, VADA is something that should be ignored. The reality is, it's stuff like this which prevents the sport from growing even more and puts an undue risk on the fighters. I think it's indefensible, and it's an embarrassment to the sport.
Do you think their MO was just money, profit to keep the event going?
I can't see any other MO. It certainly wasn't, for safety. There wasn't a discussion about, and we've had our own situations, and there have been situations where, there's been contamination, there have been, very low trace levels. There wasn't any discussion of that. I don't know what the levels are. Nobody does, other than a few small people. But there was a very, fierce defense, and there was supposedly a huge lawsuit coming to enjoin the fight. But, for reasons that, I'm not at liberty to discuss, it was clear they were never going to do that because, if you go forward with that kind of lawsuit, then a lot of other information comes out and people see the truth, and at a certain point, I think it's a black eye on the sport, at least that portion of the sport and the people who are involved in that part of it.
Yeah, part of me was thinking, well, what's the point of having a testing day? If one drug body says this is illegal, and another one's like, well, that's not on our list, and they're like, well, there's the loophole, we can go around it.
Well, and look, at the end of the day, UK anti-doping, pulled their sanction, so, I don't think there's really a whole lot of, of lack of clarity in the situation, whether it's VADA or UK anti-doping. It was serious enough that UK anti-doping pulled the sanction. That says everything you need to know.
How do we avoid this situation or that happening? What needs to be put in place? Because it's
I think there needs to be more clarity. And look, I know some of the UK laws. They have very different privacy laws than us, and it's a complicated situation. But I think there needs to be more clarity and transparency. I mean, I think there has to be automatic notification of certainly the opponent and every governing body and every governmental regulatory body anytime any test is failed, whether it's UK anti-doping, whether it's VADA, whether it's a U.S. state commission. There should be transparency. We should all know this. I think it's ridiculous that people don't know, that people are going forward with combat sports events without knowing the true story of what's going on with the opponent. I mean, I think that's just, indefensible. Okay.
They sat on it for, I want to say, a few weeks, from what I've read. How does that happen? How? I don't understand that.
It's a lot of. I think it's a lot of collusion by a lot of people who should know better.
Yeah.
Who don't have your safety at risk, who are looking at their own commercial interests ahead of the safety of the fighters. I mean, I don't see any other way around it.
Yeah, it's just surprising to me that if they knew and they did inform Team Eubank, that they would be like, oh, whatever, or
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, look, it's a complicated situation. If the other fighter knows and wants to go ahead anyway, that's one hurdle. The question is, even if a fighter is willing to put his health at risk, there are situations in which we do not allow fighters to put themselves at risk. Who we say, even for their own good, even though a fighter may want to continue in the fight, we stop the fight. Even though a fighter says, I will fight somebody who has tested positive. I think there are situations where we step in, or the government, meaning we as sort of stewards of the sport, whether it's a regulatory body or sanctioning body, steps in and said, look, I don't care what the fighter thinks. We are looking long term, and this is not something that we're going to allow happen. And I think that's what people should have done.
My last one for you, Stephen, because I know you got to go. You being head of a network, and I know this is just your opinion, but say 6 months from now they go back and hey, we should have the fight. Do you think it's in good spirit of the sport to have that fight even be considered because of
look, if there's transparency and there's clarity about what's going on and there's testing and it's above board, then sure. Look, but there's discipline coming in some form or another. That has to be complied with. I don't think that should be evaded. There are all ways you can go to this jurisdiction or that. Like, that is a problem with the sport as well. But, I don't mean that, these two guys should never fight again. There's a punishment that's going to be handed out, very likely. Once, that has been satisfied and there's a clean record established, then everybody goes ahead. But I think, saying, hey, on the technicality, wasn't UKAD, so we're going to go to this jurisdiction that ignores the regulatory body. Like, that's the kind of thing that makes a mockery of our sport.
Yeah, what's the point of testing? Like,
Right.
It's all a business thing. If
Right.
we go ahead and do
Right.
that.
Okay.
All right, Stephen, I know you're getting pulled. Thank you so much. Good
All
seeing
right,
you.
thank you.